Hi, in this video I'm going to be talking about how to see a panic attack coming and make it less uncomfortable to experience, or perhaps prevent it altogether. I'm Orla Kirby and I'm a therapist specialising in helping people to move themselves away from severe anxiety and or OCD so that they can connect more with their true deep self, feel much calmer, much more confident, much more who they are, able to create the kind of life they want to create for themselves. So, in terms of how to do this then, in terms of how to see a panic attack coming and respond and react to that sense in a way that helps to either, make that a less awful experience, a less challenging experience, or perhaps to head it off altogether and not experience a panic attack, there's kind of two main things I want to cover. So one is knowing your own particular warning signs that would apply in multiple situations, and the other is knowing particular situations that are that previously you have experienced a panic attack in that place or with that person, or when this particular thing happens, or when that topic of conversation comes up, or whatever, right? Your own kind of associative links, right? So first of all, I'll talk about your own kind of warning signs that would be kind of across many situations. So this is just really different for different people, and you may not even be fully aware of it yourself. So this is partly about you might be very aware of it. Some people really know, right? Some people, I ask them about it and they know, oh, well, this happens and then this happens, and I start to feel a bit hot, and then I start to feel a bit dizzy, and then I start to feel this. And what you notice, it's really different for different people. So, panic attacks mean very different things to different people. And it may be that all the same things are happening, but people are more aware of or more focused on different parts. And then, of course, there are different extents and different levels of adrenaline, different levels of panic. So, there is just very many different ways to experience this. So it's important to know for you what your earliest signs are, essentially because the earlier you take action, the earlier you can, either head off or shift the experience to be like a much lower level type of panic attack, right? So that's the point of knowing these early signs, is so you can do something, right? So you can start to use hypnosis that little bit earlier. So, like I say, for some people, I ask them, what are the early signs for you? And they absolutely know. They can just list off, well, this happens, and then this happens, and this happens. And again, that will be really different for different people, right? For some people, it's more just the disassociating thing, where they start to notice, I'm going into that, or some people, it is more, they'll notice their heart going, or for some people, they just get a particular sense that they find hard to put into words. Or so ask yourself, what is the earliest sign? And then once you know that, is there something before that? Is there something that tends to happen before that? Right? And you really want to get back to as early a warning sign as possible, because that's when you want to start the method that I went through before, right? So if you look back at the videos that we've just covered in this series or this playlist that are kind of, basically how to get out of a panic attack once it's happening, that same method, you can just start it earlier, right? You can start that earlier before the panic attack has really started, right? At that earliest warning sign, use exactly the same method, and it might not even happen, right? Or, you might experience a much, much lower level of discomfort, right? And it's interesting because actually, even if it doesn't shift your experience, or you feel afterwards like, well, that was just as bad as it normally is, and I was doing all that stuff, it's still very different to be actively engaging and actively doing something with your mind in response. That's really important in terms of what you're doing in your mind, because you're creating a pathway that you can then use more the next time, right? And it may be that it will take a little while to shift that for you. But some people experience a change straight away once they learn those techniques, once they learn the breathing and the imagination work and the two breathing techniques. Some people that will be very effective straight away. For other people, it will take some practice. Okay. I'm just writing down something here, because what I've just remembered, and what I will make another video on, is that sometimes the hard thing is just remembering to do this, right? And that does kind of relate to what we're talking about here. So some people say, well, yeah, I've really got the 4-8 breathing down now. I've got the box breathing down now. I've got the imaginative stuff up and running. I can imagine all this amazing stuff. I didn't think I was imaginative, and now I'm so imaginative, and I can really imagine all these things beautifully, and that's fine. But then when I'm actually notice I'm about to have a panic attack, I forget that exists, right? I forget that exists. So I'll do a whole video probably on how to remember. but essentially that's also the reason for knowing about these really early warning signs, is that you're more likely to remember at the earlier stage, right? The less stressed you are, the better your memory is going to be, right? So if you're realizing really early on, oh, okay, that's a bit of a warning sign, yeah, then that's helpful, because you will have more access to your resources. It's going to be easier to use the hypnosis, easier to use all of this relaxation techniques, the breathing and the imaginative work, and you're more likely to remember that that is a resource, that those are resources that exist for you in the first place, right? So yeah, the early warning signs are important. The second thing I want to talk about is the, and some people really don't like doing this, right? Some people are fine with it, but some people say, no, I don't like the idea of that, because the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is noticing particular associations, right? Or some people use that word trigger, some people don't like the word trigger, but, you know, very understandable reasons. But I guess it's a well-known word, right? So that you understand what I'm saying. What are the points that you have previously? So some people it might be, oh, I always have a panic attack when I go into a supermarket, or I quite often have a panic attack when I'm swimming, or I quite often have a panic attack when I'm in the passenger seat and someone else is driving, or I always have a panic attack when I leave the house, or it's always when I see that particular person in my family, I always have a panic attack then, or I sometimes have had a panic attack if I'm in a house by myself and it's very, very quiet, or whatever, right? For different things for different people, right? For some people it can be very unusual things. There are ones that come up a lot, but you will know yourself probably, oh, there's these particular situations or people, or it might be more topics of conversation, right? Maybe it's when people start talking about money, right? You feel kind of panicked and you could go into a panic attack. Or for some people it could be, when people start talking about relationships, right? Or for some people it could be, when people start talking about their children. Or, there could be, for a range of reasons, there could be particular topics of conversation or ideas or thoughts even, maybe particular memories for you. When particular memories come up, or even flashbacks, or, you could go into a panic attack there, right, where you've had some sort of association with the past. And it might be that there's certain things that prompt that, right? And of course, in a way, this is always what's happening, right, with any kind of trigger, is that unconsciously or consciously something is coming up from the past. However, you might be really aware of that, right, in terms of this person reminds you of this thing happening, or this place reminds you of this thing happening, right? So then you can kind of start to do a bit of thinking, because it might be, for example, that maybe this thing that you're going to do next week is the kind of thing that might previously have caused you to have a panic attack, because it is associated with that thing that you find very difficult, right? So even if that exact situation hasn't happened before, you kind of think, oh, that's a potential, something that could perhaps lead me to have a panic attack. Now, why sometimes people don't want to do this approach is because they feel like they're almost making it happen, right? And of course, there can be a kind of anxious thinking that can do this, right? Like, oh, well, I've always had panic attacks when I go to supermarkets, so I better just stop going to supermarkets, right? Or, I've always had, or sometimes even just one time I've had a panic attack when I was in the passenger seat of a car, so now I don't ever want to be in the passenger seat of a car, right? And that can be very limiting, of course, right, if that's your response. So some people just think, no, I've just got to kind of press on and almost forget that idea of this thing gives me a panic attack, or that thing brings on the panic attack, because I want to keep doing things, right? And in a way that's kind of a healthy impulse, right? And of course some people take a different approach and are more like, oh, well, that I have had a panic attack in that situation or around that person, so I'm going to withdraw from that, or I'm going to not do this. So in all different kinds of ways, it can be associated with people, this kind of investigative thinking of in what situations, what are the triggers, what can be kind of, can feel like a negative way of approaching things, or a bit of a hopeless way, right? But that is really not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is slightly different, right? It's more about noticing potential, right? Potential links or associations, right? And recognizing the challenge there, and that actually you can do something to shift that, right? That even if every single time for the whole of your life, or as far as you can remember, you've gone in a supermarket, you've had a panic attack, that doesn't mean that has to continue for the rest of your life. And that absolutely is a changeable thing. And there are ways to shift that, absolutely, right? At the same time, if you almost pretend that's not happening, right? If you kind of say, oh, well, I'm just going to approach shops without doing anything because this oughtn't to be panicking me, and I know that it's safe really, and what am I doing? I'm just going to go into the shop. Then you're almost not quite acknowledging the reality of what's been happening for you, right? It's actually perhaps more helpful to think, oh, okay, this is something I've previously found challenging, going to the supermarket. So before I go to the supermarket, I'm going to make myself really, really super calm, right? I'm going to spend not necessarily a whole hour, right? But a good 5-10 minutes beforehand doing some hypnosis, right? I'm going to start off from a really great base level of calm, yeah? I'm going to, and it doesn't need to be like dedicating the whole morning or the whole day before, this would get in the way of your life, right? But I'm going to allow myself like a 5-10 minutes time, because this is great for me anyway, right? This is lovely for my brain anyway. This isn't a harmful thing I'm doing, this is a helpful thing I'm doing. And I'm going to just think, oh, okay, the supermarket, that's something where I've previously found that challenging, right? Maybe every time, or maybe sometimes I have had panic attacks in that situation. So before I go to the supermarket this morning, I'm just going to give myself 5 minutes or 10 minutes of really deep breathing, really practicing hypnosis and relaxation work, maybe also doing something I enjoy, right? So, listening to a song that I really like, or doing something else that puts me in a really great mood, right? And that is going to start you off at this lovely kind of level of mood, and you're going to lower your stress levels. You're starting from this lower level of calm, right? Or higher level of calm, depending on which way you want to put it. But your stress levels are way lower, so it's harder to spike from there into that super high level of adrenaline, right? It's kind of like, if I'm already feeling fairly stressed, or just like just like it might be for me, it might feel just like a normal level of stress, right? If I'm feeling just kind of like middleish or actually quite stressed, it's easier to go from quite stressed to the very high level of panic, right? That's an easier leap. If I'm starting off, right, leaving on my journey to the supermarket, feeling super blissed out and really calm and just lovely, it's more of a jump, right? Which does make it less likely to happen in the first place. And it's also going to make any of my kind of preventative efforts easier. It's going to make them work better, right? So if I start off from that really low base level of stress where I'm feeling very calm and really happy and lovely, and then even if I do go to the supermarket and I do start to feel a bit panicked or a bit stressed, it's going to be easier to use all these techniques that I've been talking about, the hypnosis, the breathing, the imaginative stuff. It's going to be much easier to use that because of starting off at this kind of low base level of really lovely deep calm, right? So those are the two things I'd recommend then, is first of all, really getting to know your warning signs that might apply across a whole range of different situations and things going on, and just things like, oh, is it that I notice first that I get dizzy, or is it that I notice first that I get a bit sweaty, or is it that I notice first that I start to feel confused, or is it my heart beating a bit faster, or what do I notice? What's the first early, and then is there one before that? Is there something that happens before that, right? Really knowing those, and also thinking about particular situations or people or topics of conversation, things that have felt associated with it before, right? So that you can just allow yourself a bit of prep beforehand. Yeah. And this isn't the same as saying to yourself, oh, well, it's definitely going to happen, because I think that's what can put people off this approach is, oh, well, it's definitely going to happen. People don't want to accept that, right? So they're kind of thinking, well, I don't, I'm not going to prepare beforehand, because that's almost like saying it is going to happen. And I get that. I understand that, right? But don't think of it that way. Think of it more like, I'm preparing for this potentially challenging situation. I don't know that I'm going to feel stressed. I don't know that I'm going to feel panicked, but it's something that's happened before in that place or with that person or when that topic comes up or whatever. So I'm just allowing myself this lovely hypnosis, which is like a lovely thing anyway. It's only 5 or 10 minutes. And that's a really great thing for my mind and my body anyway. And then, I'm allowing more room, right, for something potentially challenging coming up. Yeah. Okay, so the next video is going to be about how to get out of a panicked or high anxiety state. Right, we're going to talk about kind of that level of panic or anxiety that isn't quite panic attack, right, but is kind of a step down from there. Because again, if we can shift out of that, that's going to make less panic attacks happen, right? Because it's all about stopping things earlier, kind of thing. So yeah, that's going to be a video about how to get out of a panicked or high anxiety state. That's the next video, and I'll see you in that one. If you like these videos, please do like or subscribe down below, and I'll see you in the next video.